you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon Howse.
Us. He's the director of communications here. But before we do that, yes, we have a new pope. And I say we as in the world has a new pope. I'm not Catholic, but we do have a new pope in the sense that the world does. And at least let's say it this way. The Catholic Church has a new pope. And he's from America, the first American pope ever. He was born in Chicago. And he seems to have been advanced by Pope Francis. Everything I've been reading about him, it seems pretty shocking. I mean, I guess we weren't expecting this. I wasn't. Our team wasn't. It seems as though he was greatly advanced by Pope Francis. The word is he will continue the so-called reforms of Pope Francis, the first Jesuit pope, who certainly was pushing, I would say, Marxism. That's my personal opinion. Progressivism, at least, right? But really, aren't those the same things at the end of the day? So we'll bring you more on that as the news develops. But today was set aside for this very important museum, the Victims of Communism Museum. I want to spend a few minutes with Michael before we go to Mrs. Fleet. Michael, thank you for joining us, and thank you for letting us be here today.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having us.
Whose idea was this museum?
Sure. So the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation was enacted by a bipartisan act of Congress in 1993. It was later signed by President Bill Clinton. In 2007, President George W. Bush helped us erect our statue by the Capitol Hill. That's our Goddess of Democracy, which is a replica of the statue that students erected during the Tiananmen Square protests and eventual massacre.
That was in 1989, correct?
Correct. Just as the Berlin Wall was falling down. The museum was the brainchild of our co-founder, Dr. Lee Edwards, who sadly passed away this past December. But the museum is 2 blocks away from the White House, and I see it as sort of Dr. Lee Edwards' legacy of anti-communism. Our doors opened in the summer of 2022. We have 3 permanent galleries on the first floor, and then we have a temporary gallery upstairs, and that's where groups, partner organizations, and ethnic communities in the area can bring in their own traveling exhibit and tell their story of the fight against communism to America.
Well, we went through it today, and what you've done so far is excellent. The history, the timeline, laying it out. The only thing, and this is not your guys' fault, the only thing it should be is 100 times bigger.
I agree there.
Because this is, I mean, we talk about how many people did communism kill. It says downstairs 100 million. I wrote a book several years ago, and I said I think it includes 500 million, particularly when you include abortion. So I'm thankful for the Holocaust Museum, but that's government funded, I think.
Yes.
You guys aren't.
Correct.
So I guess it's easy to be a large museum when you get government money, but the question I'll ask Mrs. Fleet is, why is it this isn't bigger? And I think the answer is, I'm not sure there are a lot of power brokers in America that want a bigger anti-communist museum. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. In 1989, communism fell in some ways. In Europe, the Berlin Wall had fallen, and and just in 1989, the Soviet Union fell as well. But communism did not fall around the world.
Correct.
And as you mentioned, we mark the 100 million killed under communist regimes. And we pull that number from the Black Book of Communism, which is written by a group of former Marxist scholars, themselves the believers of Marxism and communism.
Well, they would want the number to be lower, wouldn't they?
But then they turn the page, so to speak. And that number, according to these scholars, does not count
abortion.
Exactly,
yeah.
Yes. But today, even though the Berlin Wall has fallen and the Soviet Union no longer exists, there are still more than 1.5 billion people oppressed under communism.
Today, still 1.5 billion.
Billion, yes.
You said communism didn't fall when the Berlin Wall fell. I agree with that. How do you think in America, maybe in Europe, do we see communism being hidden through masking terms under different ideologies or names?
Sure. So I think there is an unfortunate lack of education, whether in the United States when it comes to communism and socialism. There are several polls. VOC put out one in 2020, which found that about 40% of young adults have a favorable or positive view of socialism in the United States. And for people as a whole in the United States in 2022, that percent was 36% favorable as a whole. Americans thought that socialism was favorable. And that's a little shocking because if you look back in the history books or what's happening right now, the truth is unfortunately plain to see. Wherever communism goes, it leaves behind in its wake death, destruction, famine, and oppression. It's a system of total control. And so our mission, VOC's mission, is to educate the rising generations about the truth. And unfortunately, it's the brutal truth of communism. That however you write about it, you try to enact this system, whether in theory or in practice, it does not work, and it only leads to oppression, death, and suffering.
And I'd like to ask Mrs. Sleet about this. I wonder if communism today isn't going to find itself hiding in technology, hiding in technocracy. That's a big, buzzword today. People maybe their eyes roll back in their head when they hear it, but it really just means using technology to control people. And I wonder if the ideas of communism and technology are going to be used, and in some sense, it might be worse than communism, but it'll be shall we say, in their view, a more stringent, all-encompassing, and cleaner form of communism, right? Through eugenics, through who can travel, deleting people's bank accounts, you can't get on an airplane. I mean, this would be a form of communism, but maybe even going another level because of the technology that could be used to bring it about. What are your thoughts?
So directly to your point, I think what you're talking about is happening right now in China.
Yeah.
That's plain.
Social credit scores.
Social credit, and also social control. So I'm sure some of your viewers may be aware of the ongoing Uyghur genocide.
Yes.
And that's where somewhere between 1 to perhaps even 3 million Uyghurs, they're Turkic people, a Muslim population in the northwest of China, they're being oppressed and forced into labor. But that system is underpinned by technology. It's through DNA tracking. It's through camera tracking. It's through these big number crunching models that are facilitating the Chinese Communist Party to forcibly uproot an ethnic people and force them to work and to labor, to not be able to practice their religion, and to taint global supply chains with the goods of forced labor.
Wow. All right. So let's pray that your museum grows, because you have more room to do it between downstairs and some side buildings. Any plans of expanding right here at this location?
Thank you, sir. So we are 2 blocks away from the White House. We're in a 10,000 square foot facility. And as I mentioned before, we have 3 permanent galleries and 1 temporary gallery. We do have space to expand internally. And the goal is in the immediate future is to expand 1 or 2 more galleries. Right now in our temporary gallery space, we have an exhibit on the fall of Vietnam. Saigon fell 50 years ago.
1975, right?
Exactly. Just a few days ago, 50 years ago. Our next exhibit will be on Cuba, exploring Operation Pedro Pan, which is, or was, America's effort to save children from Cuba as Castro came to power. And so in Operation Pedro Pan, the United States government, working with Cuban families and faith-based organizations, actually flew out tens of thousands of unaccompanied Cuban minors out of Cuba that was being swept up into communism to America.
And what year was that?
That was as Castro was coming into power, and so it happened during the late 50s, and the program was going on in the 60s as well.
Wow. What is your website?
Excellent question. Thank you, sir. So your viewers can reach us at victimsofcommunism.org. And if you want to visit our museum, you can go to vocmuseum.org as well.
Excellent. Michael, thank you for letting us be here.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. We're going to switch seats real quick, and Mrs. Fleet is going to join us. I highly recommend her book. You know, I've been holding it up. And in fact, I think I have a copy if I bend over here. Where did it go, guys? Oh, where did it go? Right there. Oh, it's on the other side of me. Here we go. Here it is. Mao's America, a survivor's guide. Mao's America, a survivor's warning, actually, I should say. A survivor's warning. We've had a great conversation off camera before we went on air. This is our first time to meet in person, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a great place to meet.
It is, isn't it? We've got about 2 minutes before we have a hard break and the music takes it away, but tell our audience briefly your story. I mean, you were born and raised there, and you even went into a forced re-education program, right?
Yeah. So you're talking about the victim. I'm one of them. I'm one of the billions of victims who lived under communism.
And today, 1.5 billion.
Yes, and I was one of them. I spent my first 26 years under Mao's regime, one of the most brutal communist regime in the world, in history. And so I'm sorry, what's your question?
So eventually you were forced into some kind of re-education program?
Yes.
Youth camp or something?
Yes, and I started, my memory actually started with the Mao's Cultural Revolution. I was in my first grade, and by the time I finished, that's pretty much the end of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, which lasted for 10 years. When I graduated from high school, there was nothing for, not just me, for all young people, because there's no economy, everything was destroyed. So Mao sent all of us to the countryside to work in the fields, to get our so-called re-education. It's basically forced labor. And I worked in the countryside, and started when I was only 16. I worked there for 3 years until Deng Xiaoping came to power and reopened the university, and things began to go back to normal. And so at the age of 19, I was able to go to college and study English.
Wow.
And when I was 26, I was able to get a scholarship and come to study in America and in Kentucky, next to Tennessee.
Where we are from, but you never went back, right?
I did go back to visit, and my last trip was 2020, and when the COVID
happened. Yeah, hold right there. The music, I know you don't have an earpiece, so the music's playing. We're going to have a hard break. We'll come back and talk with her, and then talk about her warning. The things that she sees in America that remind her of Mao's revolution. You don't want to miss this, folks. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Glad you're with us. We are again coming from the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, just 2 blocks from the White House. And my guest now is the author of Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning. Mrs. Ji Van Fleet joins us. You can get her book, by the way, on Amazon. We have so much to talk about, and the time's going to get away from us so very quickly. But you went to school, so finally the colleges opened up after the death of Mao Zedong, correct?
Yes.
And you got to study English, so you learned English, and eventually you came to America. You went back in 2020. I'm a little shocked by that. I would be afraid that they would know what you've been doing over here.
No, I was not doing anything back then.
Okay.
And my activism started in 2021.
Okay, so now you probably couldn't go back, right?
No, no way.
If you went back, they wouldn't let you out, correct?
No way I can go back now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that sacrifice, because that means you can't go back and probably see family and friends, correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm. It's very sad.
It is very sad. How many people do you think died under communism? Because I wrote, as I said earlier with Michael, in one of my books several years ago, I would put it at 500 million, but I was adding in abortion. What would you say?
Absolutely, because about 80 million people died under Mao. And
just that one leader alone.
Yes. And Mao was the one that started, but the one-child policy, but it was Deng Xiaoping that implemented. And since then, it's in the late 1970s and early 1980s, they implemented it. Since then, they forcefully aborted more than 365 million babies. Put that all together, it's way past 500 million. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it's sad that we don't include that, because the abortion industry is largely...
They have no voice. Yeah.
That's right, they have no voice.
Yeah.
And the abortion industry is largely driven by people that believe in communist ideologies, whether they know it or not. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's all about control. And back then, they feel like population was a problem, so they want to get rid of it. So all the abortion was forcefully conducted, that they hunt pregnant women as criminals and drag them to hospitals or sometimes just abortion stations and just forcefully abort the babies.
Why? Tell me, why would a communist nation not want to grow their population, particularly for their military and other things? Why would they want to limit their population?
Very good question. Why? Why then? It's because China was so poor back then, and the big population, they consider it as a burden. It's all the mouths that need to be fed.
Yes.
And then they want to reduce the population, because to them, people are resources. At that time, that resource was a burden. Okay, and then that population turned out to be the gold mine, because they provided the cheap labor for the rise of China's economy.
To make iPhones.
Absolutely. And do you know how much the labor was when when China was led into the WTO?
The World Trade Organization.
Yes, that was 2003. It was about 43 cents an hour.
That's what they're paying them in China.
Yeah.
43 cents an hour.
An hour, but paid by the American investors and all those corporations.
So if a corporation in America wanted to assemble something in China, they would be paying about 43 cents an hour to have their product assembled in China.
Because those are slave laborers. They have no rights for bargaining. They have no rights for strike. Okay, so that was really the fuel for China's rise of its economy. And then what happened? the cheap labor ran out. The abortion that they implemented now is really created this really serious
Population crunch.
Exactly.
So now they're
It's
encouraging
collapsed.
people to have children, right?
Yes. Now abortion is banned.
Now abortion is bad.
Yeah. So this is a
So
really,
how many babies? It was a one-child policy. Then how many now is it?
now it's like now nobody's having any children, actually, not even one. Many young people just don't even want to have one.
Why?
So because they don't see the future. They see that there's no
Hope.
no hope for them, because the boom is behind them. All the soil was collapsed. So what they do now is they ban abortion. Just from this alone, the story of forced abortion to ban abortion is all because the Communist Party regard human lives as their resources. Resources to develop, resources to get rid of. It's all about their needs.
So how are they going to make up for the lack of workers for their forced labor?
Good
How
luck.
are they
I
going to
don't
grab
know.
that?
I don't know how. You can't force people to get pregnant. Maybe they can. Maybe they're thinking about it.
There are things that are not allowed in China today, or maybe we're never allowed, obviously, but certainly not there, that we do in America. We just had recently a Supreme Court ruling in Minnesota where women can now go topless in Minnesota. We have sex changes on children. We have perversion beyond what one could imagine being pushed and promoted by people in America who, some of them refer to themselves as progressives. That's just another word for communism, is it not?
Yes, I think communism has changed faces. And so what happened to me is not exactly what's going on here in America, because it keeps changing its face in order to destroy a society for the goal to control it. So what happened in the Cultural Revolution is basically canceling everything, destroy the tradition, destroying the social norms, and that's what Mao did.
Destroy tradition, destroy
norms,
the traditional norms,
and the family.
Yeah. And as I went through the museum today, the exhibit down on the first floor, which we took a lot of footage of, and we're going to be promoting this museum. People can come here and go through it in about an hour, wouldn't you say, Michael? So we're not asking you folks, if you come to the nation's capital, to come and give 3 hours. I wish that was the case, frankly. I wish this museum would take you 6 hours, 10 hours to go through. But right now, the sources of funding are not there, which ironically, Michael told us that in addition to private funding, there are some formerly communist countries, their governments send money to this private group because their governments are now run by such staunch anti-communists. Is that right, Michael? What are a couple of those countries? Can you say? Poland? Hungary? They send money to help keep this private museum open because they want people to know about the horrors of what happened. And as you go down on the first floor, you'll read about it. But whether it was reading about what happened in Russia, in Poland, Hungary, all these other countries, then when I came up here to the temporary exhibit that is basically about the fall of Saigon in South Vietnam in 1975, what we read about again was the same pattern. And as I was reading this, I started snapping photographs with my phone, and I said to my wife and to Logan that this is the same template. And it was about what you just mentioned: destroying tradition, destroying family values, destroying cultural norms, destroying patriotism.
In order to control. That is the key. What is communism? It's basically control. It's a totalitarianism. So I'd like to mention something about Poland and Hungary. It is a really cautionary story. They were part of the Eastern Bloc, right, controlled by the Soviet Union during the Cold War. What are they fighting now? They are fighting a new, I call it a new Soviet Union, a new USSR. That's European Union. Now they are fighting.
I want to stop you right there, though. The European Union is now your new USSR.
Absolutely.
And, I agree with you, because what's going on over there? You
Because
say anything.
they are exporting communism.
Yes.
But this communism look a little different. From the old-fashioned communism from Soviet Union. This communism is called woke.
Woke.
So they're fighting.
I call it cultural Marxism.
Yes, it's the same thing. Cultural Marxism is woke. So now they are fighting against the enemy from the West. Before, they're fighting the enemy from the East. That is the situation we are dealing with now. It's communism really taking over the whole world. We are in a different kind of a Cold War. At first, in the first Cold War, we know where our enemies were, right? We know. We can name them. And now we don't even know, because they're everywhere. They are inside and outside. And so that is our challenge. And you ask why we have a museum that for communism, which was responsible for killing more than 500 million people. Why it's so small? It's a very good question. It's because communism now is everywhere. Are so many people actually in charge, in power. Actually, they are communists themselves, knowingly or unknowingly.
Knowingly or unknowingly.
Yes.
And isn't that the case? So many don't know that the values and philosophies they're promoting stem from communism.
Communism, yes.
People at the top, I think, do. Now we come back from the break. We're going to have another hard break from the computer. But we come back. I want to talk to you about where China is today. I started with Michael, and that was the issue of using technology to control people, the social credit scores, etc. Because now this is really going to allow globalism, technocracy, as it's called. That's a big word, technocracy. Again, people, their eyes roll back in their head, but it's just usually using technology to control people. That's already going on in China. So I want to talk about that when we come back. I feel like I should be hearing the music play at any moment, so I want to make sure we're still connected to our audience, VCY, and everything's good. Because I felt like we should have the music. Yep, here we go. We're still connected. People need to get your book. It's available on Amazon, and it's Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning, Mrs. Xi Van Fleet, okay? Now, we are in the nation's capital. We're 2 blocks from the White House. This morning, we were at the Jefferson Memorial filming. We were at the Lincoln Memorial filming. We have done so much filming here. And I've been struggling with my voice for weeks, and we finally got everything blooming in the Memphis area, and it got passed, and I was starting to heal, and then I came to the nation's capital, where you guys are a few weeks behind us, and now all the pollen and everything is hitting me hard again. So I apologize for my voice, but we've been filming, and we've been talking an awful lot, interviewing people. But we have so much to share with you when we come back. When we come back, we have so much to share with you from our nation's capital, and continuing our conversation here with Mrs. Van Fleet. All right, now if you appreciate what we're doing, it's worldviewfoundation.com. And the reason I thought, by the way, that we should be in a break is because I was looking at a screenshot, Logan, that had me looking at the time an hour ago, and I was forgetting that we're not on Central Time, we're on Eastern Time. So I must have taken a screenshot of something in my notes here from an hour ago. So there you go. We're still actually got another minute to go here. But anyway, if you appreciate what we're doing, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. I do hope you will stay tuned for Crosstalk coming up at the top of the hour with Jim Schneider, vcyamerica.org, vcyamerica.org. Michael, how many people are coming through this museum in a given year? What do you think? No, nearly not enough, right? And I only found out about it two months ago through Tamara Scott. So we need to promote this. People need to bring their kids here. They need to learn this history. As I was taking screenshots of your history of communism, I was taking screenshots thinking to myself, I've got to share this with more people. It should not be a difficult timeline to memorize and how this happened. But unfortunately, it's not taught in our schools here in America. We're going to talk about that, as well as using technology, as they do in China, to control who can travel and who can get an education. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com.
All right, welcome back. Back with us, worldviewradio.com, worldviewradio.com. All right, Mrs. Van Fleet, I want to continue where we pick up where we left off at the break, and that is now the ability of communists and communist states and actors to use technology like never before. China, I mean, you guys are that country over there, you're from China, but China now, I mean, they are really advanced in their technology, are they not? I mean, you walk across the street and jaywalk, they got your picture and the money's out of your bank account before you get to the other side of the street, right?
Yeah, but the question to ask is, where did they get the technology?
America?
America. Yeah, they stole the technology. Also, we helped them with the technology. Everyone, not everyone, people should know that everything like foreign media and social media are banned in China.
Foreign media and social media are banned.
Are banned in China. So they have this great firewall, and the block all the information from coming into China. And so that's how they control. And where did they get this information? I mean, the technology. It's by Americans, and especially Cisco. Cisco helped China to build that firewall. So this is something we have to really, really pay attention and understand, that America, capitalists, have been helping the communist China. And now they use this technology to do what? To control their own people. So a lot of people, I guess, heard about the social credit system.
Yes.
That is using Western or capitalist technology to control their own people. And so, and everyone is absolutely, everyone, it's called, I call it digital totalitarianism.
Digital totalitarianism.
Yeah, in Mao's era, where I lived, you know, they have to use physical force to control everything. And do you know how they do it? Because there are not enough police to go around to control people. What they do is that they use people to control people, and to use people to report people. And so we see that during COVID.
We sure did. We had up in New York, they were encouraging people to call in and tattle on people who weren't wearing a mask or social distancing. And
the team was, and ask the people in Minnesota to report about their neighbors.
That was under Tim Walz, who was almost the VP.
Exactly. So that was the old way of controlling the masses. And now they have a better way. Digital surveillance.
And now May 7th, that was yesterday, the Real ID Act went into effect for federal buildings, a lot of federal buildings. I guess they're going to push back your having to have one to get on a plane, but they're going to go through with that. But we're here in Washington, and there was a few places where like, oh wow, you don't have the Real ID, you can't come in. So they're pushing that, and eventually that will condition people for what's coming, which is some kind of digital ID. Would you agree?
Yes, but that is China is way ahead of us. What they have is the digital surveillance technology they have is control every move of everybody using the apps and everyone their salary is paid in digital format. Their bank account, everything is connected. So if they were identified by this authority as a threat, and they have no access to their bank, they have no money, and they can't fly, they can't take train, and they just can't survive. So just with a punch of a button, and they can achieve the total control of 1.4 billion people
in China.
In
1.4
China.
billion.
Yeah.
In my book in 1995, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk, I talked about social credit scores coming to America, and I used the Dangan system in China, where this file is opened on everyone when they enter school, and their hiring and their firing and their job promotions, ability to travel, are all based on review of their Dangan, which includes their political views, etc.
Absolutely. And then now China start to have homeless people. How? It's because they have such bad
Credit scores?
credit scores. They can't find job. They can't take a train. They can't. They're stuck. So they become homeless.
And so what are they going to do with them eventually? Eventually, are they just going to exterminate them?
I don't know, but that's looks.
I mean, it shows the failure of
no,
their...
but no, you can you can redeem yourself.
Oh, you can.
Different ways.
But I guess they could use that to say, if you don't want to end up like these people, obey us. So maybe that's
Absolutely.
a good
No.
object lesson for the people to conform.
They give you a way out. They don't just want to condemn you, but they want to
Reform you.
Reform you. How? Many ways. One is forced labor, free labor, basically slave labor. You can work for the government,
Pay off your debt.
pay without pay, and then you can get your score built back, and you can donate blood. Forced. You can do all sorts of things, and you might be able to get your score built up back to normal.
Carlos the Jackal, he wrote years ago that the only way to bring down America is a coalition of the Marxist and the Islamist. We refer to it as the red-green axis, the red being Marxism, the green being the Islam.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of similarities between Marxism and Islam. And eventually they're going to fight each other, I guess, to see who's in charge. But what are your thoughts on this red-green axis active in America? Because they're building mosques all over America. They're going to implement Sharia, Islamic law. They don't want Christians. They don't want Jews. They don't want freedom of speech. You can't criticize them. They talk about totalitarianism. It's in Islam as well.
Yes,
so the
is,
Marxists and the Islamists are working together to bring down America.
And this is something I think a lot of people started to realize is a problem. But a lot of people still don't understand how Islamism invaded the West through the doors of cultural Marxism.
That's right.
That is how.
That's right.
And what were the programs they have? Multiculturalism is one of them.
Yes, multiculturalism, which is not the study of multiple cultures.
No.
It's a denigration of the foundational Western worldview of America.
Every culture is good except American culture.
Exactly.
That's really...
Every religion is wonderful except for anything...
Christianity.
Yeah.
And that's really... It's the Marxism paved the way for Islamism. And there's another thing I think people need
I want to go back to that. Marxism paved the way for Islam in America, and now they're building 402-acre compounds in Plano, Texas, and mosques like you can't believe. And I won't, detail too much here, but I have a guy that we hired undercover who is involved in a major investigation through us. In what Islam is doing in America, and soon we will unveil where he has been undercover and what he has discovered.
Wow. The other thing I think people need to understand is communism is not an economic system. Communism is a religion. And so, and what is Islamism?
It's a religious system.
It's a theocracy. So is communism. And that's very, very important to understand. And so that's why, and that's why they want to control your mind. They really, how we get here is not like communism just use troops. to force some ideas on you. No, it is through subversion and infiltration. And that's how it started in America. They took over our educational system. And then they little by little, they pushed this Marxist ideology, and you change your worldview. So and here's a worldview.
Worldview tube.
Yeah, they change it, and you don't even know. That's why I say that there's so many communists in America, and a lot of them don't even know they are, because it changed faces. It's no longer like a Soviet-style communism. It is woke. Woke is communism. If I use woke, people will have an easier way to understand. That's change your worldview. You look at things through this lens. That is not biblical. That is not what this country was built on. It is something new, and that's Marxist. And they look at everything through the lens, and they say oppressors and oppressed. And then for them, it's just made it very easy.
Yes.
And so they go out, and that's why so many people want to be the victim. That's why the victimhood or victimology is so popular. Once you claim yourself a victim, and you get power, right? You get power.
Well, isn't that what the cultural Marxists at the Frankfurt School said when they came here in 1933? The source of all suffering and oppression is Christianity and capitalism. So they want to stir up chaos. They want to create problems and then have a victim coalition. Herbert Marcuse, who coined the phrase "make love, not war," had a victim coalition. The feminist, the sexual minorities, homosexuals, etc., the immigrants, the poor. These are all victims of who? They're victims of the bourgeoisie, the system of the capitalist system, and it's going to be the capitalist system of the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, the worker.
But when you become a victim, what do you want to do? You want to rebel, right? You want to
get in the streets and burn and riot.
Yeah, you want to a revolution.
Bring down the system, burn down the system.
Revolution. That's what they wanted. That's what we see just yesterday, right? In the Columbia University, they took over the library. Those are revolutionaries. Those are Marxists. Those are the danger that we're facing.
And the Marxists, by the way, just went to the Supreme Court to try to defend and say that a parent can't choose what their children are taught. So parents that say, I don't want my kids taught LGBTQ, I don't want them taught these things. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And based on the oral arguments, we think the Supreme Court is going to decide.
Look at the Supreme Court.
Side with the parents, we think this time, but it's always just a gamble is what they're going to do. But can you imagine we're even in America having to take to the Supreme Court whether a parent has a right to say yes or no?
But also look at the Supreme Court. Look at it. Half of them were communists.
That's right.
And this is what people need to know is the long march through institutions. And that phrase, I think more and more people have heard about.
Yeah, but that came from Italian communist Antonio Gramsci.
Yeah, it's because they have this long game. They plan and they have patience. The little by little by little, they already took control of our institutions. There's no constitution that is not infiltrated.
Every institution.
Including our government, our political parties, our military. So
our military. Well, before we started this interview, I mentioned to you, we were talking about Christianity and infiltration. I said, well, I wrote a book in 2018 called Marxianity, because that's how much I believe mainstream Christianity, I'm not talking about your mainline liberal denominations of the 60s. We all know they've gone progressive/communist. I said, the sad thing is many of our what were once evangelical church denominations and organizations are now, whether they know it or not, they are communist. They're Marxianity. Open borders, social justice, redistribution of wealth, climate change, which is really just to try to use environmental laws to crack down on the free market system. So Marxianity, they've now infiltrated mainstream evangelicalism. I want to ask you about that when we come back. We'll have 8 minutes when we come back. I want to ask you about that, and I want to ask you about the media, because you say it's infiltrated every institution. I want to ask you, how many independent media outlets in America do you think we actually have anymore? So let's talk about that. My guest, you need to order her book. It is Xi Van Fleet. Her book is called Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning. We're at the foundation, the Memorial Foundation, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. I call it the Anti-Communist Museum, 2 blocks from the White House in Washington, D.C.
Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
Welcome back. Here we are live. 2:45 Eastern Standard, 1:45 Central, May 8th, Thursday, May 8th. We head back tomorrow evening to the Mid-South, continue praying for our protection, provision. We've had a lot of interviews we were not planning on. We asked you guys to providentially, pray that we'd have providential appointments, and we have some great interviews we weren't planning to get. What we found out is actually, Logan and I found out, and Melissa found out where to stand in the U.S. Capitol, in the buildings there, to grab the members of Congress on the House or the Senate. And we actually had some wonderful conversations with some of them. And they were like, wait a minute, why are you interviewing all these other people, not me? I would have said yes. Like, your staff didn't get back to us. We got one congressional staffer, I think, in hot water yesterday because the member of Congress was not happy that we've been trying to get a hold of him for 2 weeks, and that's not going to go well for that staffer, sadly. There's some great staffers, and then there are others that don't seem to really want to do too much work, or maybe they're a little progressive and don't want us interviewing them. I don't know, but we have found out that there are many members of the U.S. Congress, the conservative ones, that are eager to be interviewed by us. One congressman, I shook his hand yesterday and said, told him we wanted to interview him. We've been trying to reach him for 2 weeks, and he was stunned and wanted to know more about that. And but when I introduced himself, I said, "Hi, I'm Brannon Howse with Worldview Tube." His response, he smiled big and he said, "I know who you are." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, I've been watching some of your videos." So folks were having an impact with members of Congress that we didn't know, knew who we were, watched our stuff. And he's like, "Yeah, I definitely would like to be interviewed by you. Let's get that done." And his staff started pulling out their business cards and handing them to Logan and I. So we made a lot of contacts up here. And we'll be coming back because we have found some key ways to make contacts with them, particularly where to stand at a few key places as they walk by, and then just introduce yourself. And it's turning out some of them know who we are when we introduce ourselves, and they're very positive, so that's good. Joining me now again is Miss Van Fleet. Let's talk about that. The mainstream evangelical denominations that back in the 80s were standing strong, many of them have collapsed to what we call political correctness or cultural Marxism, and many of them don't even know they're embracing communism, do they?
Yes, because they infiltrated our educational system, including the
seminaries.
Seminaries, absolutely. And I think Trayvon, your friend,
Trevor Loudon.
They made a documentary.
Yes.
And about the church.
Infiltration, yeah.
Infiltration. It's everywhere. And this is our challenge. A lot of people don't know, actually, what their worldview is totally Marxist.
And they don't even know it.
They don't even know it, and that's our challenge. Yeah, that's why I wrote that book, and to compare this two cultural revolution. What we're experiencing today in America is America's cultural revolution. And so that book, and I try to give people the parallels. Nothing is new. You think cancel culture is new. You think identity politics is new. It's nothing new. It happened in China. That's how they use those tactics to stir up people, to mobilize the masses to do what? For them to seize power. It's all about power.
How much of our Congress do you think is influenced by communism or communist money or even blackmail?
I think a lot. I don't know the number, but we have a lot of them. And so and
meaning the CCP can funnel money through different groups and then make sure it gets to the right person.
Absolutely, every one of them. Now the newest breaking news is that the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, and she got a donation from the CCP for $300,000 in her 2023 or 2022 race. Everywhere from state to cities and to Congress and even to the president. Well, Biden's money, where it's from? Part of it, millions,
China.
is from China. Yes.
Let's talk about media. How many of our media outlets in America are funded by the CCP and therefore control what they say, and therefore would never come here and do this kind of interview and promote this museum?
And media is interesting. It's not like CCP just infiltrated them. They are communists themselves. And so they absolutely share the same ideology. And so, but also they get a lot of money from the CCP. One of the ways they get money is paid advertise. And it looked like it's an article. And so it's in, I saw it in the New York Times and the Washington Post. Looked like an article by the paper, but it's not. And it's CCP's propaganda. But in the very bottom somewhere, they have a tiny little print. This is from the Chinese government. But they don't disclose it in a big way because money. It's so corrupt, and it's just like this is. So when we
and by the way, one way they're funding schools is through the Confucius Institute.
Yes, it's money.
They give school districts hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands,
millions. They have the Confucius Institution since its founding.
Inception.
They spend more than $1 billion.
$1 billion.
More than $1 billion.
Just in America.
I think it's worldwide. $1 billion, while in rural China, the kids have hardly a roof over their classroom. But yet, they spend that kind of money. Why? Why?
Because they want to teach kids in America. By the way, the people that come here to teach from China are trained by the Chinese government.
Of course.
They come here, they must be in contact with the Chinese embassy and what, in the U.S. and making regular updates and reports, and they get paid to come here and teach that America should not be afraid of China, that America and China have so much in common, right? To brainwash the American children.
Yeah, and the communist China is the so-called communist China. It's not real. But why they're so popular here? Not only that they gave money to the universities,
school districts too,
and but those people that are in charge of the universities and school district, they are aligned with the same ideology. That's why. So you can't just complain that China did here or there. They bought our farmland, they infiltrated our institutions. But we have to ask why it's happening. It's because it's allowed to happen. Why it's allowed to happen? Because we have people within welcome that idea because they share the same ideology.
Yep.
So
it comes down to a worldview war at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
The battle for ideas, the battle for hearts and minds, right?
Yeah.
Truth versus a lie.
Yeah. And our threat. Now we talk about, people talk about the.
And we've got 30 seconds. Tariff
war, and I think the threat is over there. I say the threat is within, as well as without.
Threat within and without, but it's really big time within, isn't it?
Exactly.
Because we allow it to happen.
Yes.
They can threaten us all they want, but if we don't succumb and comply,
we allow it.
Yeah, we allow it. I hope you get her book, Mao's America: A Survivor's Warning, Mrs. X Van Fleet. Stay tuned for Crosstalk. I'm Brannon Howse in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being here. Take care.
This has been Worldview Radio.
There's really only one person in the world, and you've had him on the show, Dr. Mark Miller, who understood what would happen if you combined these three ingredients: the collagen, the Versol B collagen, the asteryl astaxanthin, and the cat's claw. And each one of them independently are amazing, but when you put them together synergistically, they increase each other's power. And that's why we're getting all these amazing results. And the reason why they're so great, Brendan, is because When you take a look at collagen, you mentioned it, hair, skin, nails, but collagen also makes up 40% of the protein in your body, makes up your gastrointestinal lining. This is why you're not having to take Pepcid anymore. It makes up your joint spaces, your bone health, your teeth health. You need a good collagen in you, and we have the best, but it's because of the other two ingredients. Asteryl astaxanthin, 70 human clinical trials. And by the way, collagen, or Verisol B collagen, has 10 human clinical trials behind it. Astaxanthin is water soluble and fat soluble, so we can get and protect around the cell, but it can also get into the cell and protect inside the cell, where it sets up by the mitochondria, the powerhouse energy producing organelles. And when it produces energy, it's going to spit out some free radicals. And we need a great antioxidant to absorb those and scavenge those free radicals. And there's nothing better than astaxanthin. It's 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, 3,000 times stronger than resveratrol, 850 times stronger than CoQ10, 350 times stronger than green tea extract. It is the powerhouse, the king of all antioxidants. And then let's not forget about the cat's claw. Cat's claw is the king of I would say, from a standpoint of reducing and eliminating inflammation. That's what it does. It really targets that nuclear factor kappa B. Not really necessarily, you know that, but that's the pathway to your cells that causes us so many problems, because chronic inflammation in our bodies causes health issues. And when we can reduce and eliminate that, we have a home run. And that's what the cat's claw does. The astaxanthin is also an anti-inflammatory. Collagen also has properties of being anti-inflammatory. Synergistically together, these three are a powerhouse.
But with Brannon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world. And it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because he, from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepcid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHowse.bg.com. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution.
Watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon Howse.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
You're making a good point. If you could get a union, which I think will happen pretty quickly, if you think about just the EU, Britain, Switzerland, Canada, and Mexico, that's about 72% of all the trade with the U.S. So if you get that resolved, it works. The one thing I would say that I've noticed as I do business all around the world, in the Middle East and in Europe, 50% of the people in the world have Trump derangement syndrome. And they still have a really hard time understanding why he's back in the White House. And I say to them, listen, it doesn't matter. He's in the White House. We have to deal with the policy, not Trump, the policy. Let's forget about the fact that he's in the White House. There's nothing you can do about it. He was elected with a majority. Let's get over the derangement syndrome. Let's focus on the policy and get stuff done. Because I got to tell you, there's a lot of people that go out of their minds just the fact that he's back in there. And I realize it. It is what it is, but I've got to deal with it too. I mean, I just have to deal with policy. And I think you're right. If he gets this policy right and circles the wagons with the Europeans, the Mexicans and the Canadians, that's a more powerful charge against China. I totally agree with you there.
Is Trump derangement syndrome a real and dangerous mental illness? Welcome to Truth Thursday on the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. Well, according to the Daily Mail, Minnesota Republicans are seeking to legitimize the pejorative term used to describe the left's disdain for President Trump with a bill in the state legislature, and it's going to legally define it as a mental illness. That's true. They really are. And they go on to say even more. Let me quote this. While mental health experts have pointed to harm of misusing medical and psychiatric terminology to pathologize political opposition, they argue that the term captures a kernel of truth, close quote. Well, I believe this is a serious issue, even though I like to make fun of them. And it could easily lead and is leading to political violence. Yes, domestic terrorism by these people on their fellow
kernel of truth, close quote.
My guest
I believe
today
this is a serious issue, even though I like to make fun of them.
More
and it could
is Dr.
easily
Carol
lead
Lieberman.
and is leading
He
to political violence. Yes, domestic terrorism
and
by these people on their fellow
America's psychiatrist. She's a 3-time Emmy-honored TV personality and internationally recognized expert in the psychological impact of terrorism. Dr. Lieberman has been a consultant in many, many high-profile cases, including the Jenny Jones murder case, Evander Holyfield, and the Gabby Petito civil case that did not go to trial, by the way. She's frequently seen on Fox News, Newsmax, and the Washington Times, analyzing crime, political psychology, and media-fueled mental health crises. Dr. Lieberman, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. And now you've been on Worldview Tube.
Yes.
Psychological impact of terrorism. Dr. Lieberman has been a consultant in many, many high-profile cases, including the Jenny Jones.
O'Leary there has talked about this, and I think the phrase that he uses a lot is it's an irrational reaction to Donald Trump, this TDS phenomenon. Do you agree with that perspective? But or is there something deeper
Well, I actually am in the process of putting the finishing touches on a diagnostic proposal that I'm going to be submitting to the American Psychiatric Association. And I have described mild, moderate, and severe kinds of cases. But my definition, my basic definition is Trump derangement syndrome is an irrational, quasi-psychotic hatred of anything Trump, resulting in rage and over-the-top efforts to destroy him and